Richard was really worried that I would read the last chapter of his novel, since he read the first chapter. Now, I read Richard's novel some months ago, and I reread it just recently, and yet hearing you read it now, it gives a whole new dimension to it. It's very touching, very interesting, and it has such a retrospective poignancy to it. A story that's actually being told by somebody who's about 66 years old, looking back over his life. The first time I read from Mud Woman, I read the first chapter, and as I read it, my throat sort of closed up, and I had various symptoms of panic, I guess you could call it. So I thought if I could just get through that, I would never read that again. So the second time I read, I found another chapter to read from, and there was like 5 pages that then became very long, and somehow it was longer than 5 pages. So I thought if I got through that, which I eventually did, that I would never read that again. So I think tonight, this is like the only 3rd time I'm reading from it, and this will be the last time, I'm sure. I thought I'd read the last chapter, just out of strange perversity, something that nobody does. I can't read the first chapter. But this is actually the last chapter of my novel. It's not the last chapter of Richard's novel. I would never be reading from Richard's novel since I haven't tried it yet. But this is somehow we're in our own identities and kind of trapped there, so this is what I'll be doing. Now, just very briefly, since it's on page 422 of my novel, I don't have time to fill you in on all the tedious details. But the woman, what interested me about this novel, particularly of many things, a novel is like a river where a lot of tributaries flow into it. And one of the tributaries was that I wanted to write about a person who has really a complete collapse, a mental, emotional, physical collapse, but then pulls herself together, as I think we all have the capacity to do, and many people have done. Rather than writing a tragedy and focusing on a person who disintegrates, which is one kind of literature, I wanted to do something to bring this person back. So this is the final chapter. She's been a somewhat passive person. She's been a very good person. We all try to be good, and we succeed, I think, to varying degrees. Her family had been Quakers, and she's always been a good person who has never really acted. So this is the final chapter. She thinks she's had some trauma in her life. You don't have to understand why anything that has happened to you has happened, nor do you even have to understand what it is that has happened. You have only to live with the remains. At Lookout Point on I-81, she stopped to use a restroom. Lookout Point was an elevated peninsula of rocky land above the Black Snake River Valley, east of Sparta. This is upstate New York and west of the Adirondacks. Looking north, MR could identify Mount Marcy, Mount Moria, Thunder Bay Mountain, Adirondack peaks dissolving into mist. It was a striking view. You wanted to stare and stare. You did not ever want to look away. Below, near the highway, was a small picnic area where there were picnic tables and grills and trash bins overflowing. And on the trail leading to the Lookout Point, litter had been blown into the underbrush in a filigree like dirty lace. Somehow it was late, nearly 3 p.m. MR had lost precious time in Star Lake. Yet for a long time she leaned over the Lookout Point rail and shivering. Her hair whipped in the damp, cool wind. The sky was mottled and marble. Patches of sunshine like struck matches appearing and disappearing. Already the air was autumnal. The sun had shifted in the sky. She felt a stir of half pleasurable melancholy, yet of anticipation. She had made the right decision to leave Carthage. "Ma'am, hi there." The voice was low and unnervingly clear and familiar. Emma looked around. She believed herself alone at the rest stop except for a family, a young family, in the picnic area below. She was sure she'd seen no other vehicles. But here stood a tall, lanky, dirty-skinned boy of some determinate age, mid-20s or older, slouched less than 10 feet behind her on the trail. "Ma'am, hi there," had been a sly sort of murmur, like a caress across the back and shoulders of the solitary woman. So quietly the boy had come up behind her, it was as if he'd emerged out of the steep rocky path. His hair was stiff with grease and looked dyed, and a natural caramel color. His bloodshot eyes were alert with ironic merriment. He wore a faded black t-shirt for which the sleeves had been torn, and on the front of the shirt was a faded cartoon figure, a superhero. His jeans resembled the stylish designer jeans favored by university undergraduates, bleached at the knees, torn and patched. On his feet were the rotted remains of what appeared to be expensive jogging shoes. A university dropout, Emma thought, but of another era. She saw in his eyes a glimmering light of recognition, but she had never seen the boy before in her life, she was sure. "Yeah, howdy, ma'am." With an air of mildly distracted dignity, Emma tried to ignore this insolent greeting. She knew that it was a good idea not to lock eyes with a dirty-skinned boy, as one is instructed not to lock eyes with threatening wild creatures. "Excuse me, please." Emma turned to walk back down the path to the picnic area, but the dirty-skinned boy didn't step aside to let her pass. "Ma'am, did you hear me?" Now it was difficult not to look at him, though still Emma tried to keep her gaze from locking with his. She was thinking the young family was below at a picnic table. She was not alone on the trail and not in any real danger. "Ma'am, you got a car? Maybe I can ride with you." I don't think so." "Where you headed so anxious-like, ma'am?" His face was a young old face. The skin appeared to be not dirty so much as discolored and stained. Emma wondered if he was wearing makeup, or had lightly laid his face in mud, as his arms with mud to stave off insects. She felt dazed and disoriented. There was something very wrong here. The boy's smile was respectful and sincere. "I can drive, ma'am. You look like you benefit from some chauffeur life. I can help. You're driving some distance and alone. I'm getting like anxious being alone. And I work with cars, ma'am. I know engines. I know the insides of things." His smile deepened with a terrible intimacy. His teeth were small, yellowish gray and thin, and his eyes so familiar. Emma had been looking helplessly at him, just slightly up at him, not knowing what she did. The dirty-skinned boy was taller than Emma by several inches. His shoulders were broad like wings, but his chest was sunken, his waist and hips narrow. You might have thought, looking at him, that one of his legs was shorter or less developed than the other, though this didn't seem to be true. He appeared stunted in some mysterious way, not evident to the eye. "Ma'am, where are you from?" I'm leaving now. Excuse me, please." "I'm from Messina. Know where Messina is?" "Yes." Emma knew where Messina was. "Fucking shithole. You can't appreciate till you've been stuck there." Emma was trying to determine, could she push past the boy and risk being touched by him, accosted by him? Or should she back away and climb over the guardrail and try to get back to the picnic area below by sliding down a steep, pebbly hill? A sign warned danger, do not approach edge of cliff, but she could avoid the sheer drop-off by cleaving to the narrow incline to her left that descended to the parking lot about 40 feet below. It was not a good idea to be in this remote scenic place from which one might be pushed by a stranger on a whim. "You look like a nice, kind, generous lady, ma'am, not like some selfish bourgeoisie would pass by a hitchhiker because he's a different ethnic type from you." A hitchhiker. That was why she'd seen no second vehicle below. Here, too, scenic shithole. "Fuck it, man, as if you're starving. Can't appreciate, ma'am, till you've been stuck like a hell of a long time." He coughed hoarsely, yet theatrically, as if to punctuate his extravagant words. Emma smiled guardedly. It was her nature to feel sympathy, not to ignore another's request even when, as common sense might decree, she was in danger. "Ma'am, you smiling at me? Ain't laughing at me, are you? That wouldn't be kind." "I'm not laughing. Maybe you got some change you could spare?" "No, I'm sorry." "Sorry you don't have no change, or sorry you ain't going to give it to me, ma'am?" The thought came to Emma, but you can give him something, a few dollars. But no, that would be a mistake. He will accept what you give him and take the rest by force. Foolishly, Emma was smiling, trying to determine if possibly the young family was still there after all down the hill, if there was another vehicle below that she failed to notice. Badly now she wanted to call her father. It was a mistake to be so often alone, So much easier to be obliterated from the face of the earth, to be extinguished if one is alone. As if reading her thoughts, the boy said with sudden vehemence, "Ma'am, you're not in any danger. I will ride with you and be your friend. Looks like you're all alone and got no husband, huh? Or he run off, or got old and died." "Happens all the time, ma'am." The dirty-skinned boy laughed as if he'd said something witty and risque. With an air of calm, Emma was considering the nearby guard railing, which was about 2 feet high. If she could manage to climb over it quickly, before the boy grabbed her, she would risk the hill. Not certain how steep the hill was, but she would risk it. As a girl, she'd been led into such seemingly desperate adventures and had not been injured, at least not seriously. And if another vehicle had driven into the parking place below, or the young family was still there, someone would hear her crying for help. The dirty-skinned boy wouldn't dare follow her. "You could give me a few dollars, ma'am. Ain't like you're going to miss a few dollars. In fact, you could give me all the money you have and the keys to your car, ma'am. No matter if it's a piece of shit car, beggars can't be choosers. You could give me, ma'am, or I could take." Though Emma had been expecting the dirty-skinned boy to rush at her, she seemed to be taken wholly by surprise when he did. She screamed at him, fighting back, more furious than panic. As a girl, she learned to defend herself, however ineffectually. For you had to know, to give up is the error. You must never give up. She smelled the wild, sick smell of her assailant, a rank animal smell, as he pummeled her, tried to wrestle her bag from her. Of course, if all he wanted was her bag, she should surrender it to him. But she did not, and she would not. She kicked at him blindly as he wrenched her off balance, tugging at the shoulder strap of the bag. When she turned to run, he grabbed at her clothing, her arm. Emma thought, is it going to end here like this? Fucking cunt. Ugly fucking cunt. Why the fuck do you think you should be alive, bitch, when the rest of us ain't? Emma half fell over the guardrail, on her knees, but managed to right herself. Then she was running down the hill, sliding down the hill, nearly turning her ankle. If only she were wearing sturdier shoes. She scraped her knee and torn her clothing, but felt no pain yet, not even wet blood, in the thin trickle down her leg. The hill was nearly vertical. Only a young, heedless child could half run, half fall down it without injury. Emma clutched at shrubs and small trees to impede her fall. As above her, leaning over the guardrail, the dirty-skinned boy jeered. "Ma'am, that's real dangerous, ma'am. Gonna break her neck, ma'am. Crack her skull." A small avalanche of pebbles and dried mud accompanied her sliding down the hill. The dirty-skinned boy was making his way along the path, which was winding and not direct, for he didn't dare follow her. She was aware that for all his boastfulness, he was stiff-legged and carried himself with his shoulders hunched. In a burst of strength, she ran limping to her car, which she left unlocked, fortunately. Now it was the proper thing to have done. She threw herself into the car and locked the doors, jammed her key into the ignition even as the dirty-skinned boy hobbled in her direction, yelling and waving his arms. Emma saw that the young family had departed, leaving her alone. And in desperation, she pressed out hard on the gas pedal as the car leapt forward. The dirty-skinned boy continued to taunt her, cursing her spread-legged in the path of her car. He had time to get out of her way, surely, but he stood his ground defiantly, refused to move as the left front fender struck him. Not hard, but hard enough to knock him aside as the car rushed past. His thin body was deflected and tossed aside as one might toss aside a rag doll, and Emma thought, have I killed him? What have I done? But there was the dirty-skinned boy staggering to his feet, trying to rush after her car, but lacking strength. His face uplifted, a mask of blood where he must have struck the ground. His expression was one of astonishment and fury, and Emma acted by instinct, not hesitating, but reversing her car, swiftly reversing and turning the car in a series of deftly executed jerky maneuvers, turned the car around and swiftly exited Lookout Point, rest stop, and within seconds, she was on I-81, panting and half sobbing, yet exhilarated, thinking, no one will know, no one, ever. By dusk, she'd arrived at the university. Thank you.